Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of Crafty Creatives. This is our first session on Crafty Types, and we've done a really cool session last week, which just was a little taster into what you can expect to see over the next 5 weeks in this new course that we've got going on. Okay, so welcome everyone who's here. I hope you're well. I hope you saw the the email that went out just to let you know that the course will be starting today. And I'm really excited to be exploring this with you guys because typography is something that I don't know very much about, and I've been really interested to learn more. So the next 5 weeks is going to be a big learning journey for all of us. And all I'm trying to do in these sessions, guys, I'm not claiming to be a graphic designer. I'm not claiming to be a designer of typography. But what I'm doing is I'm using these crafty type sessions to research and learn more about typography and fonts and how they're made and designed. And the considerations we need to think about, or considerations the pros tell us that we need to think about when we're creating typography. I'll go away, gather a lot of information, present it to you in hopefully a nice, easy to digest way, and do some cool little activities along the way as well. So that's going to be the process over the next 5 weeks. Just going to check to make sure that usually my colleagues send me a message if they can't hear us or anything on my phone, so that's why my phone is there. But yeah, so Crafty Types is part of our Crafty Creative series, whereby we look at breaking down some of the art and design kind of barriers by looking how we can use our own skills and how our own kind of interest in arts and crafts, and how we can utilize the digital world to kind of enhance that. Okay, so that's what we're doing over the next 5 weeks, like I said. Just to let you know that the next 2 weeks will be a recorded session. However, there will be a session on at the same time next Thursday and the following Thursday at the same time at 1 o'clock till 3. But it won't be a live session. But it'll still be a very engaging session, and we'll be monitoring the chat as well if you've got any chat going on, or any questions as the session goes live next week. Right, okay, so let's have a quick look at where we are and what we're going to be doing. So today is session 1. Last week we had a taster, and what we did last week really was a really cool session where we looked at creating our own font. It was something I've never tried before, so it was all I tried once just to make sure it worked, and it did work prior to going into the session. And we explored some different obstacles and how we can overcome them, and essentially created our own font last week, which was really cool. I've never done that before, so I was really excited by that. As always, guys, we've got some details that we need to get from you guys to register you on these courses. So please fill in our form. We've revamped the form as well, so it's a lot easier for you to fill in your details, and it only takes 5 minutes. You don't need to download any forms now. It's all online. So if you just click on the link here, that will be available within this presentation at the end of the session. Click the link here. It'll take you to our new enrollment. This is the enrollment form here, and it's just filling in your basic information. Okay, and there's a couple of pages, a few pages there, where we're just gathering some of your information so we can register you on the course. Now, the importance of these enrollment forms, guys, are for our funders really. With these sessions, these free sessions are funded by the National Lottery. So what we need to be able to do is to be able to show the National Lottery that we are engaging with the learners that we proposed we would when we went for the funding. Okay, so it's really just a form filling exercise, but equally what we've tried to do with the new enrollment form is, let's just go back to the enrollment form just to show you, just quickly fill in some quick information here, just to quickly explain something to you. What we've tried to do is this is obviously just your emergency contact information, additional support that you might need. We've tried to combine our old forms into this one nicely, easily accessible form where we can learn a little bit more about you as well as part of the enrollment form. So it helps us understand how you like to learn, so we can then design the forthcoming sessions in a suitable way for you, so you're getting the most out of it. How much you know about the course as well, just so we can gauge what kind of research and what kind of what level of information we need to put across to you guys. So you might have somebody who's very keen to learn, but they don't have they don't know anything about typography, for example. So then we can include some very basic information in very basic fundamentals into the session. But then you might have somebody who's really clued up about typography, and then we would obviously put a bit more information, a bit more advanced kind of ideas and things like that. So we're trying to cater for a wide spectrum of the people that are enrolled onto the course. And then we've got intended destination, which is always important for us as a training provider, so we can see where you might want to go after that, so we can help you and support you if you're looking at maybe going into employment. We can maybe look at helping you in other ways, maybe designing CVs, things like that. And then the last bit is other areas of interest, because at Media Savvy we not only do digital stuff like you can see here, e-safety, for example, social media strategy, blah blah blah. We've got some arts and design sessions. We also have some health, fitness and well-being sessions as well. So if you have any interest in those, please tick the appropriate boxes, and then we can then contact you and let you know about any coming sessions. All right. And then at the end, it's just my contact information at the end, because I'm the tutor on this course, just in case you need to get in contact with me for anything else. Okay, so that's the kind of form filling, boring stuff out of the way. And then at the end, we've got an end of session survey, which looks very similar, okay, and very self-explanatory. So, like I said, Crafty Type is part of our Crafty Creative series, and we're looking at really gaining more enriching our lives, enriching our understanding on certain topics. So this one is all about fonts and letters and typography, and we've kind of at Media Savvy we've come up with this kind of statement: in order to appreciate something, we need to have some understanding of that topic. So I'm looking at this, for example. I've got a couple of examples that have just caught my eye. I've got this coffee jar here. It's full of different types of typography and fonts that you may or may not be able to see. We've got some here, on there, and these are everyday items that we kind of use without even thinking. Okay, I've got another jar here. We've got a well-known brand here, and all these fonts and graphics on there may or may not be we may or may not be drawn to them. Well, we are drawn to them when we buy them off the shelf, but they're quite passive objects. So in order to understand like the typography and the graphics and how they're put together, um, in order to appreciate that, um, we need to understand why those choices are made and how they're put together. But what we're going to try and do is try and put it into a really accessible and easy to digest kind of a way. All right. What I don't like to do is I don't like to read a lot of information about something. I prefer to kind of work it out myself. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to carry out my research, sift through all the good bits of information and try and present them to you in a nice way. Okay, so this is where we are on the course. This is a course kind of plan. We had our taster last week. Excuse me. Today we are looking at the history of fonts and typography. Um, we're going to explore the difference between serif and sans serif because they're the two different groups within typography, if you like. And then over the next second and third, fourth and fifth sessions, we're going to be exploring different things. Okay, we're going to rejig this a little bit, but today we're going to look at the history of fonts, and then we're going to jump into some really cool activities, going over how we can create our fonts in the first place. We're going to utilize the font that we created in our taster session, and we're going to try and apply some basic rules to that and tweak it slightly. So some of the basic rules that the pros tell us that we should be following when we're creating our fonts, we're going to try and apply that to our font that we designed and made last week. Okay then, so today's session we're going to look at what is typography, a brief history, how we create our own fonts, and how then we can use those fonts, the typography, and then apply it to the real world. Okay, applying it to maybe a flyer or something like that, and we're going to look at trying to do that in the second half of this session. The session is made up of two halves, as usual, when I deliver. So we'll have an hour break, we'll have 10-minute break, sorry, halfway through the session. So at about 2 o'clock, we'll have a 10-minute break. I've got a cool little activity for you within that break as well, and then we'll jump back into the second half. Okay, dokie then. So what is typography? When we when I've looked into typography, there's lots and lots of terms that come out there that get used and banded around by the pros. We hear things about different parts of the font, different parts of the letters. We hear about apexes. We hear about, I heard this word last week and I still don't know what it means, gadzook. These are different things and different ways that the text that form the actual the letters and symbols, or how the symbols appear. We hear about fonts, and I use this word quite heavily. We hear about typeface, and we hear about glyphs. Okay. We also hear other parts of the anatomy of typography, which is the sender. But we're not going to worry about all that. What we're going to look at today is we're going to kind of see what the difference are between these bits. Okay. And the way we're going to do that is if we go back, the way we're going to deal with that is trying to group them into little, into easily manageable chunks, if you like. So the glyphs I learned last week. A glyph is basically a symbol. Okay, here's an example here, and if we just quickly go through these symbols, you've got loads and loads. This is just an example of symbols. If I go into my search bar here and I type in glyph, GLYPH, examples maybe. There's absolutely hundreds and hundreds of different types, and I guess hieroglyphics comes. Glyph is in the word hieroglyphics, so I guess it's something to do with symbols or representations. And as you can see, there's loads and loads of different types here. but it's just a general term to describe symbols. There's a Facebook glyph there, Facebook symbol. We've got the Twitter glyphs here at the bottom, WordPress, PayPal. All these are just symbols, okay? And all these symbols are designed in different ways. Whereas typeface, type, and font, although there are differences to those, I'm not going to go into those differences today. I might go into them a little bit later on, but I'll just use these as the letters, okay? The letters that form your words, okay? So I might use the word type to describe a letter, or a font to describe the same thing. There are differences, but we're going to generally lump them into one kind of category for now, okay? So glyphs equal symbols, typeface, type, and font are going to be used interchangeable for just to talk about the way the letters are designed, okay? Okay then, so if you want to know more about the history of typography, there are countless resources out there, YouTube videos and the like. However, I found this really cool one. It's only 5 minutes long, so I'm going to play this and just give you a really brief history of why and how typeface started, and where we are today with it. Okay, there are, like I say, there's more and more resources out there, but I'm not going to bore you to death with it. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an appreciation of where it started. Okay, so if you're just going to sit back and relax, watch this for 5 minutes. Just agree to this.
Meet Editor X, the world's most advanced website design platform.
This isn't it. This is it.
Type is power. The power to express words and ideas visually. It's timeless, but always changing. And that's what we're going to explore. Most people agree that the creator of typography was a German man named Johannes Gutenberg, and yes, he wore a hat like that. Before Gutenberg came along and revolutionized the world of communication, books needed to be scribed by hand, usually by monks, which was very time-consuming and expensive. So Gutenberg created blackletter, the first ever typeface, modeled after the writing of the scribes. Blackletter has thick vertical lines and thin horizontal connectors, which made it great for scribing, but it looked very dense and squished together when printed. Something needed to change. Enter Roman type. This particular typeface is Cambria, which you're probably used to seeing on your word processor, but the first ever Roman typeface was created in the 15th century by the Frenchman Nicolas Jenson. This is his typeface right here. Jenson worked mainly in Venice, Italy, and was inspired by the lettering found on ancient Roman buildings. His letter forms were based on straight lines and regular curves. This made them very clear and legible compared to the dense darkness of blackletter. This legible new typeface was an instant success, and quickly spread across Europe, riding on the coattails of the Renaissance. The next major innovation in typography after Roman letters was italics, which are like slanted and stylized versions of Roman type. They were created in the late 15th century by Aldus Manutius from Italy as a way of fitting more letters onto the page and saving money. Now we use italics interspersed in Roman type for emphasis. Aldus Manutius also created the modern comma and semicolon, but that's another story. Type development stayed fairly stagnant until the 18th century in England, when William Caslon created a typeface that set a new standard for legibility. While it wasn't anything radical, it was just what the world was looking for. The style of Caslon's typeface is now referred to as Old Style. A few decades later, another Brit named John Baskerville created a new variety of typeface, which we call transitional. Later still, a Frenchman named Didot and an Italian named Bodoni created typefaces that we have classified as modern. Most serif typefaces fit into one of these three categories, but what does each category mean? An old-style typeface has letters that have thick serifs and low contrast between thick and thin strokes. A transitional typeface has letters with thinner serifs and a higher contrast between thick and thin strokes. And a modern typeface has letters with very thin serifs and extreme contrast between thick and thin strokes. Next, William Caslon's great-grandson, named William Caslon IV, got sick of all of these serifs, so he decided to remove them entirely and made a new kind of typeface, called a sans serif. It didn't catch on immediately, but would eventually get really big. During the Second Industrial Revolution, advertising created a need for new typefaces. Letters were made taller and wider, mainly used in large sizes on posters and billboards. Things got pretty weird, but one happy result of all of this experimentation is Egyptian, or slab serif. It has really thick serifs and is usually used for titles. As a backlash to the complexity found in typefaces of the 19th century, the early 20th century brought something simple. Paul Renner from Germany created a typeface called Futura, and it was based on simple geometric shapes. This is called the geometric sans. Around the same time, a British man named Eric Gill created a typeface called Gill Sans that was similar to a geometric sans, but with...
I'm just going to pause that there, guys. So Gill Sans is our company font. This is the one that we use for all of our marketing and branding material. This is one of ours. Well, it's not something we've made, but this is something that we use.
With gentler, more natural curves, and this is called a humanist sans. The next major step in the world of sans serifs happened in Switzerland in 1957 with the introduction of Helvetica. It has simple curves and is available in many different weights, and some would call it the world's favorite typeface. The world of typography changed forever with the introduction of the computer. There were a few difficult years of crude pixel type due to the primitive screen technology. But then technology evolved and computers began to allow for the creation of thousands of beautiful typefaces. And
here, guys, you can see a good example of all these different resources available for you. I use this website quite a lot, and these are created by thousands and thousands of different graphic artists. You can see the different types of fonts that are ready to download instantly. These are all different styles and types, styles of font or typography, styles that you can download and use, all for free. They can be used for, some of them can be used for commercial purposes, and all of them can be used for personal use. Okay, so as long as you're not making any money out of it, you can fill your boots basically, for most of them. And this is a really good example of all the different types of and variations of fonts and typography available online that you can download. Okay.
And the odd dud. But now anyone has the freedom to create their own unique typeface. And that is the history of typography.
So there you go. Very brief history. If you want to know more, this artist Ben, he give you some really good tips there as to who the first was considered the first person to have an impact on or start typography, and some of the key players in the creation of some of the classical fonts that you've seen and used probably yourselves. Okay, so if you are interested in more about the history of it, there's lots and lots of information out there. As you can see on me suggested next videos, there's a font history of type there, and there'll be loads and loads of others. Okay, so let's move on, shall we? So what I want to do for the next, say, 20 minutes is just describe a few little things that are kind of considered by the professionals as a key consideration or main consideration when we are creating our typography. Okay, and then what I want to do is apply that to a font that we made last week in our taster session. Okay, the font that we created last week, or was it just a fun little activity that we done, and we created this font here called Type Happy. Okay, and after this session, I finished off the font and added all the other characters. I think we only had 1 or 2 characters in toward at the end of the session, and then I completed the package. So that is available to download now, and you can use that. And actually, I'll talk you through that now. I'll talk you through what's available on to download, and then we'll go through some of those basics and try and apply those basic rules to this font that we created last week. So if you go to our let's have a look, library, actually, okay, if you go to our YouTube page to this, pause that because we're live and it's going to cause a lot of interference. But if you go down to here at the bottom of or just underneath the description here, there's session files. There's a link there for the session files, also the enrollment form and the survey as well. But if we click on our survey session file, sorry, if we click on that, it's going to take you to this folder here, and this folder is a folder that I've set up for today's session, and it's got all the different elements that and all the different processes that we went through last week in order to create this font, in order to create this font that you see on your screens now. Okay, so we're going to go through that, and then we're going to apply some of the rules, some of the basic rules to enhance or to change this font. I'm not sure whether it's going to enhance it or not, but it's definitely going to change it. Okay, so that's where we're going to go with that. So let me just show you the first step, shall we? Okay, so the first thing that we did last week was we created our artwork. Okay, and the artwork was on this board here. So I'll just bring the camera up a little bit closer so you can see it. The artwork was just me writing out the alphabet, and I repeated my letters a few times until I got a letter that I was quite happy with. And that's essentially what we needed to do: an alphabet from A to Z, and some of the symbols that we might want to use and include in our font. Okay, so that's what we did. Took a photograph of it, and that's what's in our in the sessions file folder. In the whiteboard photos, there's a photograph there that I took. Okay, I took a picture of this board that's behind me. After that, we then took that image. Let me just we took that image and we brought it into our into Illustrator, where we made a digital version of the artwork behind me. Okay, and we traced over it, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with that at the minute, but I'm just going through the step by steps to show you exactly what we did. Okay, let's have a look. Let me just open that example of the font, that step. It's the Illustrator folder, and this was what we created. We created these individual. We brought our text in, or we brought in the photograph that we took, and then we traced around around them using an automatic tool in Illustrator. This is an Adobe Illustrator, to create this font, to create these objects that we then can apply to that we can then separate out, and create our individual letters. Okay, so that's what we did. That was a second stage. We brought it into the computer. Now you need to use a vector-based program for this, and if you need a bit more of a hand with that, you've got my email address. Give me drop me an email, and I can refer you to a few different resources. But essentially, we are going to use Adobe Illustrator during the course of these sessions. But there is a free version of a free vector-based program available that you can download, which is called Inkscape as well. So you can, if you're familiar with that, you can download that and pretty much do exactly the same as what we're doing in Illustrator. Okay, so we brought the picture in, we traced around it, and then after that we used Illustrator to create that document, and then we took our letters from there. We took our letters, we saved them out. I'll just make that smaller. We organized the letters into these, separated them all out, put them all on their individual pages or artboards in Illustrator, and then we saved them all out individually. Now you just need to do that in one process, but what happens is the computer saves them all out individually, so you've got a file that looks a little bit like, let's have a look. There you go. You've got a folder that should have all the different letters, which are all the letters here. Okay, and then after that we put all those letters into a font editor, which I'm going to talk to you a bit more about in a minute, and then we created our font from there. So there's only 5 steps to that. It does sound a little bit complicated, but guys, I'm not the brightest, and I was able to do it all last week. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the steps again, and then we're gonna have a little play. Okay, so there we are with the steps, and this is how you can download the individual font. If you can download the individual files from this location. If you want to create the same font that's behind me, if you want to create your own font to type, then you can just follow the same process. Okay, so let's go back. Okie doke. Right, so what we have here is we have in these, this is just an example of the uppercase versions of this font. Okay, so the font that we created last week is all uppercase, and as you can see, I could type in something now. I'm going to type something now. Hello everyone, welcome to session 1 of Crafty. Okay, so as you can see from what I've just typed out there, the computer, because I've installed that new font, it's allowed me to type using that font. However, because the font is only made of uppercase letters, it then substitutes the lowercase with a different type. Okay, a different type of different style. Okay, because we don't have anything in the lowercase. We don't have a lowercase version of a H or a lowercase version of an E. We've got the uppercase, there's the uppercase, but we don't have the lowercase. So what we're going to do in today's session to apply the basics is we're going to then save out we're going to add the lowercase versions to our font family. Okay, but let's go back just for a little minute and look at some of the basics. So this is a base. These lines here are called guidelines, and these guidelines help us kind of construct our our type and the difference, the style of the typography and the letter space and where it's positioned in relation, where the letters and symbols are positioned in relation to each other. Okay, so we've got the baseline here at the bottom where all the letters sit on, apart from the ones with the tails, so the Y, the P, for example. We have the cap height. So the cap height is the uppercase, where the uppercase and tall letters hit. Okay. We have the X height. The X height is where all the shorter characters sit and reach. And then we have the beard line or the descender. Okay, and you're not going to get taught examined on these. These are just to break it down for you so you can see how they sit in relation to each other. Okay, beard line and descender is where the tails of the letters hit at the bottom. Okay, now if you look at this little example here, all the curve letters, if you look at the little zoomed in section, all the curved letters on the top, so on the cap height, all the curved sections of the letter on the baseline all over how do I say it? All go over the baseline, okay, and the cap height. They all go over slightly. Can you see there? The curve just curve just pushes just through that line, and that's one of the kind of rules. Okay, so one of the rules is the curves of any letter, whether it's an uppercase or a lower, you can see there, they just poke through and just punch through the baseline. Okay, so that's one of the rules. The other rule is that the baseline, all the letters sit on the baseline. Okay, and all the beard lines or descender lines, all the tails of the letters kind of reach that. Now these aren't rules that we need to follow. When I say rules, they're just considerations. Okay, and depending on what style of text that you're having, we might be able to bend those rules, or we might be able to ignore them or use them in a different way. Okay, but these are for standard text and standard typography. This is to help with legibility of the text. Okay, so remember, we drew our alphabet by hand. Okay, and this is the alphabet that we drew. And then after the session last week, I drew the lowercase versions, which I've then brought into the computer as well. I brought them into the computer, traced the alphabet, and then we bring the whole family font together into a font editor, which I'll show you in the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to install it onto our computer. Okay, so if we go back, what we need to do is we need to bear in mind that our letters need to kind of sit around these guidelines. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into Illustrator. I'm going to open a new document. And I'm going to show you how I got to this stage. Okay. So this document, Happy Type 2, the Illustrator file, is available in those session files. If you follow that link that I pointed out earlier, and this is what you can expect to see when you open it up. Okay. All these white squares, forget about the letters for a minute, and anything like, forget about any of these letters. All the white squares are what you call artboards. Okay. And in the taster session, we created 26 individual artboards where we could bring in our image that we took of the whiteboard, separate them all out into these artboards, and then we can save them out. And that's what we did to create the this font, the uppercase Happy Type font that we created. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to fill in the gaps. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a lowercase version of the Happy Type, so it looks as one type of font. At the minute, you can see when I've typed in "Hello everyone, welcome to session 1 of Crafty Type," you can see we don't have the same type that goes with the uppercase, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, and I've already done it here. So this is what I did last week, and I'm going to use this in a minute, but this is how I did it. So I brought in the photograph. So went into I took the photograph, saved the photograph to a location on my computer that I could find, and then I went on to File, Place. This is the same process if you were using Inkscape, and then I located the file. So there it is, photos from whiteboard, and this here is the lowercase version that I did after the session. Okay, so I'm going to place that into my document there. Just going to make that a little bit smaller, and then we did this last session, but I'm just going to recap. We traced around it, okay? And when I say traced, we didn't individually trace around each letter. All we did was we used an image trace function that is in Illustrator, okay? So I'm shooting ahead a little bit here, guys. Apologize. I'll just undo what I've just did, and I'll show you again how to do it. So this is the image that we've brought in. That's sitting there nicely. We need to trace this, so we go to Object, we go to Live Trace, and Make. Click OK, and it's going to trace this image. Okay, if we click Expand, that then traces that image that we've brought in. Okay, and allows us to individually created this the individual letters. Okay, for from that one photograph that we've created, that we brought in. So as we looked at last week, if I do something now, if I can do that, hopefully I can do this. See if I can do this. I'm not sure I can do it in this. Maybe insert object, picture, drawing. See if I can do something. Just do it. No, I can't do it in here. But you're gonna have to trust me when I say that this. These are transparent. These texts are transparent. Okay. So actually, I can show you. I'll show you in Illustrator. So just use this as an example for now. I'm going to put a color behind this F here. Just change the color, this box to yellow. You don't need to follow me what I'm doing here if you're not. It's not important. But all I'm doing is I'm going to put this box behind the F, and you can see. Oh, I haven't done that very well. Take that, put it, cancel, put that in there. Okay, and I'll just put that at the back of that F. You can see that that F is transparent. So everything behind that F, even in the mouth of that smiley face and everything else, it's transparent. If I change that color to say a green, for example, it's going to change, and it's transparent. Okay, everything behind it is 100% see-through. Okay, so if you go back to our new document, what you see here, these white, forget about this white box in a minute. This white box isn't a white box, isn't a box that I've just drew. This here is actually a board. They call it an artboard. This here, this is the white space that we traced. So what we want to keep is we want to keep everything, all the black bits that it's picked up from the photo, but we want to get rid of and delete all the white because we don't need that. We need everything behind the letters to be transparent. Okay, to do that, you click on the little magic wand tool, and a bit like in Photoshop, if you just click on the thing that you want to get rid of, if it's a big block of color like this white, should highlight all the white in that selection, and if you press delete on your keyboard, it'll get rid of them all. Okay, so as you can see now, we're left with these individual elements, okay, which are still, these are all grouped. So if I right click on there and click ungroup, I can then move these individual elements about. Okay, we're pretty much 60% there. Okay, now this artboard, why is this important? Okay, this artboard is basically going to help you decide the final dimension of your text, of your font. Okay, so if you want to use as a rule of thumb 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels, now don't worry if you don't know what a pixel is, it could be 1000 frogs. Okay, but if you go from the principle of 1000 px, click on this button here, which is the artboard tool, click on that. Okay, and you're going to change that to 1000 px, 1000 px, and that there is where the individual letter is going to sit on. Okay, I'm going to move these out of the way, and then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this individual letter. Well, actually before that, what I'll do is I'm going to create 26 of these, one for each character. And if I had symbols, then it'll be however many symbols I want to include in my font as well. I'm not going to do 26, but if you're going to do it from scratch, you create 26 of these artboards. How do you do that? Okay, the easiest way I know how to do it is by clicking your artboard tool. Okay, holding down Alt, hold down Shift, and just drag one at a time. Okay, so let's say we've got 8, 16, 24, that's 7.21. Say let's do a few that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 12, 18, 24. Let's do 6 there, and then drag another one down at the bottom. I'm just trying to figure out how many rows I would need, and I would just go along and create your rows one after the other. Okay, when you get to the last one in your row, you don't want to select all the rows because it messes up the order, but if you just click the last one, drag a copy, don't hold down Shift, just hold down Alt to create your copy, and then create more. Okay, and as you can see there, the artboards are going up in number. Okay, so you've got artboard 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 16, and you do that another 10 times to get your 26 characters. Okay, now if you go to Window and you go to Artboards, if you click on this button here, there's your artboards. These are all your artboards that we have in this document at the minute. You go to File, just to be on the safe side, you want to save this somewhere, and I'm going to save it on my desktop, and I'm just going to call it example, test example. I'm going to save that to my desktop. I'm going to get rid of this at the minute because I'm just showing you how I got to this. How I got to having me text. Excuse me, just bear with me 1 minute. How I got to this stage. Okay, so as you can see now, I've got 26 of these boxes. This is in the document that is available to download. Okay, but if we go back to our test example, this is where we are, and then so the first thing is to create your artboard and make sure it's 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. And then what you do is you open your artboards by going Windows, Artboard. It brings up this little panel here, and then if you double click on it, you can change the artboard name. So I'm just going to call that A. Double click on that, I'm going to call that B. I'm going to double click on the text and call that C. So all you do is double click on the artboard and it'll allow you to change the text. Okay. So where it says artboard 1 copy 3, double click on it, D, etc, etc. Okay. So now if I click on this, you can see there it says number 1, artboard 1 is A, artboard 2 is B, artboard C is artboard 3 is C, so on and so forth. Okay, then all you do is you get your individual letters, drag them over, and there you are, away you go. Okay, now why did I waffle on for 10-15 minutes about this? Okay, because we didn't look at this last week. We didn't look at base lines, beard lines, X heights or cap heights. Okay, well, as I explained last week, and for those of you who weren't with us in the last taster session, I wanted to create a font that didn't abide by any of the rules that the graphic designers kind of say we need to think about. Okay, I didn't want to do that, because what I want to do by the end of session 5, I want to have a version 1 that was just done rough, raw, without following the rules, and then I want one at the end that has quite a lot of the rules and foundations implemented into the text, and then we can compare and see whether we like the first one and the second one or whatever. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So the uppercase didn't follow any of these rules really. Okay, it was just the way I wrote the text or wrote the individual letters. Okay, so what we're going to do for the lowercase is we're going to try and stick the lowercase to these 4 guidelines. Now, how do you do that then? Well, that's pretty easy. What we need to do is we need to go into Illustrator. We need to go to View and make sure your rulers are in view. Okay. So when you click on View, click Rulers, Show Rulers. These here, ruler at the top, the horizontal ruler, and ruler along the side, which is the vertical. These rulers allow you to pull guidelines out, so all the letters can sit on the same guideline. Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to put that A back where it was, and then I'm going to create some guidelines. I'm going to try and get these letters to sit within the guidelines that I'm going to make for them. Okay, and then once I'm happy with all that, I'm going to get rid of some of the duplicates until I've got alphabet from A to Z that I'm happy with, and then I'm going to take that and put the individual characters onto these boxes. Okay, and then we're going to fast forward and just pretend that I've done all that, and we're going to end up here. Okay, so if we look at this, to create our guideline, all you do, guys, is you make sure you've got your selection tool selected. You click on your top ruler, click on it, hold down with your left mouse button and pull down a line. Okay, and then we'll do one there. Okay, what I want to do is I want to select all the top I'm just trying to think as I'm going, guys, here, so bear with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this B, I'm going to move that B to the top. I'm going to get the word G just as an example and put that there. So what I want to try and achieve with putting a B there and a G there is to have kind of a template as to where the lowercase letters are going to be sitting. So I needed a letter with a tail, or a beard as they call it, and then I needed a normal letter with that hit the top cap height. Okay, and then I'm going to use those two letters in Illustrator to set the other guidelines. So I'm going to pull another one down. Remember, hold down on your ruler, pull it down to there. That's where your I think they call it the X height, isn't it? The X height is. Remember though, all the curves exceed any of the guidelines. So as you can see, that curve is way over, so that might need adjusting. But that curve there looks about right. This curve isn't. This here, that curve at the top, sorry, looks fine. But if we go back to our example again, all the bottom parts of the lowercase letters here, say for this P for example, they sit on the baseline and just go over slightly. So if you go down to our Illustrator document, that G there, the bottom part of that G isn't sitting on that baseline. So what we need to do is we'll probably need to adjust this, and this isn't a lesson on how to use some of the tools in Illustrator really. It's just about showing you what you might need to do in order to get those to where they need to be. So I'm just using this direct selection tool here and just messing about with some of those. So it roughly sits where it needs to be, and then that B there, I'll select a couple of these little points are called anchor points. I'm going to do is select these anchor points here, possibly that one, and I'm just going to pull those down slightly so that sits where it needs to be. Okay, so we've got our baseline in, we've got our X height, we need our cap height in next. So if we go back to Illustrator, this is the cap height, remember, but I'm going to treat that cap height, the curve of that, I'm going to treat that curve the same fashion that we treat the curves on the other areas of the text. I'm going to have that curve slightly going over, and then we also need that beard line which sits at the bottom. So we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4 guidelines. Okay, and then what we do is we take all these, put them in there in position where they need to be, all the other letters, get the C, D, I like that D better, so I'm going to put that there, and we would adjust each and every letter so they kind of fit within those guidelines. Okay, so as you can see, that C is quite a lot bigger than that X height, and it kind of, it's not as neat, so we would need to bring that down slightly into there. But as you can see, when we do that, we're like kind of changing the thickness of the top part. So there's a lot of detail in there that we need to really, well, we don't need to consider. You don't need to consider this, but it is a consideration. It depends on what look you're going for. And when I say rules, the rules aren't set rules. They just need to be something that you need to be aware of. So if I've just shrank my C that size, you can see that the bottom, that now doesn't look very similar to that, because the bottom there is thinner than the top there. Now if that's the look that you want to go for and that's your choice, absolutely fine. Okay, but just bear in mind it might not sync, it might not like look part of that family. So if you want it to look part of the family, you need to make sure they all kind of have the same look about them. All right, so you go along and do that for all the text there, and then you can see it can take a while depending on what you want to achieve at the end of this task. So guys, we've got to 2 o'clock. We've had a good little overview of what typography is. We've looked at history and where it started. We've looked at how we the processes that we need to think about in order to get our to create our text and our fonts, and then we're now trying to scale our font, our individual characters, our individual we can call them glyphs if you like. Our individual, not glyphs, sorry, we won't call them glyphs. Um, we'll call them letters because that's what we're doing. We're using these individual letters. We're making sure that they all sit within the 3 guidelines that we're using as our kind of. That's what they are. They're guidelines, not rules. Okay, and we're going to try and get them to fit within those guidelines so we can then export them. Okay, guys, so that's where we are. We're halfway through. I'm not going to go on and repeat all this for all the other characters because that's going to be completely boring. And what we're going to do is after the break, we're going to jump into, we're going to pretend that we've done that for all the other characters. Okay, and then we're going to fast forward to this point here where we've got them all roughly where we want them to be. We've got them all the characters on the individual artboards, and then we're going to then export those and put them into the font editor which I'm going to introduce you to afterwards. Now, as a on some when I was doing some research a few weeks ago, I found this really cool little game, if you like. You can have a play around with this after during the break. This is called a Bezier game. Now, a Bezier tool, or a graphic pen tool is what they call it in Illustrator, is a certain tool in Illustrator, and this is it here. Or they call it the pen tool in Illustrator. This is a pen. Okay, and you can create some really nice. Oh, I can't do it there. You can create some really nice curves using this tool. Okay, and this could be what you use to trace around your individual letters, or how you might edit those letters by using different elements to that pen tool. Okay, it's a really useful tool to get your head around. And this game is a really cool little game that you could probably use to try and practice using it if you're not familiar. Okay, so if you type in bezier.method.ac into your search tool if you wanted to play this during the break, you can, or whenever. And what it really does is give you a starting point. You use your mouse there, and it tells you to click where it's flashing. You click, okay, and you need to finish off there, okay, and you've only got 2 clicks to get there, so we need to go follow this line, click there once, and then we've got one more node remaining. There we go, and then you move on to a different shape. So you've got to just follow this pattern, but you're just doing it in clicks. So one click, the second click, third click, fourth, fifth, sixth. Once you've completed it, that allows you to, it gives you a little example on how to practice using that. Okay, so if you fancy giving that a go, you can. Bezier, bezier.method.ac. Type that in your search bar in your search engine. Bring up this little game, and it's really good just to get to grips with that. They call it a Bezier tool, or the pen tool, or the graphic pen tool. Okay, so we're going to have a little break for 10 minutes. We're going to come back and we're going to continue creating our lowercase font. Okay, guys, I'll see you at, say, just after 10 past 2. Okay, everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to our second half of our Crafty Type session 1. And what we're doing really is to explore how typography is created and the considerations that we need to think about when creating our own fonts. Okay, and that's essentially what we're trying to do over the course of the next 5 weeks. We want to try and create our own cool fonts and see how we can really make these bespoke fonts that nobody else has got to create some really cool bits of artwork, flyers and things like that. Okay, and we all of our Crafty Type sessions are always going to start from hand sketches of something that we've done by hand and then we've brought it into the computer. Okay, so before we had our break, what we did was we brought in a photograph of our lowercase lettering. We brought it into Illustrator, we traced it, and then we are setting guidelines to make sure that all the letters that we choose in our alphabet are kind of fit nicely within the guidelines that are kind of the rules for creating neat typography. Okay, so the rules are, or the guidelines are, should I say, let's have a look. We need to make sure that the cap height, we have a line at the top where all the tall letters sit, a line at the very bottom where all the bottom tails of the letters sit, a line above that where most of the letters sit, and then a line above that where like the lowercase lowercase letters sit. Okay, and that's what we're trying to kind of follow, trying to follow these guidelines. So how did you get on with that that little activity before the break? It's a really cool little way of learning how to use this Bezier tool that we have in Illustrator. And as you can see, I'm not very good at this at all. But it's a really good tool to kind of get familiar with when creating to create your curves and things like that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is going to crack on in Illustrator. What we're going to do is we're going to fast forward a little bit and pretend that we've resized all this text, resized all the individual elements to make sure they sit within these guidelines that we've drew out, and this is where we are at. Okay, just before this the break, I was just kind of tweaking these slightly, so they looked a little bit better than they were. So there we go. Okay, and there's my guidelines there in there. Okay, so I've done an A, B, C, D, and then I'll work my way along at the end of today's session. But let's pretend that it's all done and we're all happy with it and they're all sit within the guidelines. As you can see, mine aren't at the minute. My G is very good. The little dot to my J isn't, and the tail goes way beyond the bottom there, and so on and so forth. But we're not going to worry about that now. But what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the next phase. So if you look at our phases of creating our own font, the phases are as follows. Draw your alphabet by hand. That's what we've done. We've took a photo. We've done that. We've bring it into the computer. We've done that. Trace the alphabet on the computer and save it. Yes, we've done that. Bring your font family together, and that's what we were busy doing towards the end of the first half. And then make your family whole and install it onto your computer. So we're looking at steps 3, 4, and 5 now. Okay, so in a bit more detail and a little bit more specific, let's look at these steps again. So create your artwork, scan in your artwork or take a photograph. Use a vector-based program, we are Illustrator, to trace your alphabet. and then export the individual letters as SVG files. Okay, this is the step that we need to do next. So if you go into Illustrator, we're going to export letters A to Z as SVG files, and that's why the artboards are so important in this process. Okay, as you can see, I've got my capital A to capital Z here, and that describes these artboards, these individual squares, these individual white squares, which are the artboards. They're the capitals. Okay, and then the ones after that, so let's go after Z, which will be 27. 27 is this artboard, 28, 29, so on and so forth. Okay, now in terms of the font design, what I've decided is I'm going to keep the smiley faces behind the capitals, but not the rest of the fonts. Now the smiley. Why did I put the smiley faces in? If you weren't here in the last session, well, the smiley faces weren't in as you can see on this board here. I just created basic boring text, a basic boring type on my whiteboard behind me, and I thought, right, we need to do something with that because it's not going to really look any different to any of the other fonts that you could find online, and it looked quite boring. So that's why I added my smiley faces, and I tried to put the smiley faces behind each of the uppercase characters. Now, if I do that for the lowercase as well, I do think that this is this is the way I'm thinking at the minute. It's everyone's got their own opinion, and you could do yours a different way. But I do think, for the way I want want the font to look, I think it might be a bit too busy with all these smiley faces if it was on the lowercase letters as well. So I'm just gonna keep my smiley faces to the uppercase. Okay. So what we're going to do now is step 3, is to export these individual letters, not these ones down here because we've already done that. We're going to export these ones up here. So artboard 27 to 52. I'm going to export those as SVG files, and it is so simple. Okay, all we need to do is go File. We're not saving now, we're going to export, and then we're going to select SVG. That is my bad. Excuse me. There's 2 different export functions, I think. It might be file save as. Okay. My apologies, guys. You do go file save as. In a different version of Illustrator, you have to do it a different way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the saved as type to SVG, and then that allows us to select what artboards we are exporting. Okay, we don't want to save the entire thing. We want to export or save these as individuals, and we're going to use artboards from the range of 27 to 52. Okay, and I'm going to create a new folder in there, and I'm going to call this Crafty Type lowercase. I'm going to hope this works. It should work. So I'm going to save it in there. I just clicked OK, so we'll just see what happens with that, and it's exporting those different artboards now. So if we go and try and locate that new folder that we've created, if we go to Crafty Type, if we go to Illustrator, we've got the lowercase folder there that we just created, and there are all the different lowercase letters, okay, A to Z. Perfect, just what we want. I've put this folder in the wrong location, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that, cut to take that folder out, and I'm going to click on my Crafty Type folder. I'm going to put it into my Font Forge folder here, and you'll see why in a minute. Action can't complete because it's open in a different program. It'll be open in Illustrator. So what I'll do is I'll just save that, close it, and I'll just put a 3 on the end of that, just in case I made a mistake. Just bear with me a minute. I'll save this as well, and then I'll close this. Now this should allow us to put that folder. Try again. There we go. So there's our lowercase, okay, and I'll just, yeah, that'll do for now. Okay, so if we go back to our step by step, we've exported our individual characters SGV files, and you can see from that list we have. Now we're on to step 4. Use a font editor program to compose your SVG characters into a font family. Now this is really simple, very simple, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. Now in our taster session, I suggested a program called Font Forge, okay, and you need to download it into your computer, and then you need to install it into your computer, and we've done that last week. Okay, so last week we created our a file in Font Forge to create these this font family, okay, which is basically the uppercase version of the Type Happy font. So if we go to our Font Forge program, we're going to find that file. So if you go to we just need to locate it. If you go to, maybe let me try and find the desktop users, public desktop. Okay, let's do it a different way. Font Forge Type Happy. If I double click on that, it should open it. And there we are. You're going to be presented with this box here, and it can look a bit daunting because of these boxes, and you think, what on earth are all these boxes? But if you just ignore some of the bits that you're not interested in, what we are interested in is the upper. If you can see, these boxes represent the different, and I'm going to call I'm not going to call them letters anymore. I'm going to call them glyphs now, because each one of these boxes here represents a glyph or a letter. So if you can see all the uppercase letters, A to Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, blah. That's all here. And then you've got the other symbols or glyphs. So we've got the square brackets, the slashes, the whatever they are, accents. And then now we've got the lowercase glyphs, which are the lowercase letters, which can be classed as glyphs as well. And then you've got some symbols and all the bits and pieces. Now, we haven't drew any of these symbols in, the copyright symbols or anything else. I'm not interested in using any of those. But you might well be, and then if you wanted to include that into your font, you would need to go through exactly the same process as we have so far. So we need to bring in our letters, our individual letters, and assign them to each of these individual keystrokes, because that's what we've got up here. These are keystrokes. So if we've got File, Import, you want to go to lowercase, and you're going to change that to Image. I believe it's Image, or Image Template, or is it not something else? File, Import, the format was SGV, oh sorry, SGV, there we go. And I'm pretty sure it's a template version. No, it's not the template version at all. Okay, and then we're going to import each individual one. Click OK there, because I think that's all right. Click OK there. Bear with me 1 minute. File, import, try again. Click on that. The options. Import. There you go. And you're just going to go along and do that for the other ones. Okay, file, import. There should be C. D. Oh, sorry, I saved over the wrong thing there. Undo, C, D. And you just go along and import E. Import all those individual characters. Okay, there's your D. Put that in. E. So on and so forth until you get to Z. Okay, now I'm just going to quickly consult our presentation. These are my notes. That's that. Okay, this is where we download. Okay. Okay then. So yeah, we're just going to crack on and do that very quickly. I'm going to get F in there. G. And I'm going to leave that there for now. I'm going to press save. Okay, and then you would finish off at Z. So then the next stage to that is use a font editor program to compose your SVG characters into a font family, and then generate the font. Okay, then, so let's pretend that we've got to this point here where we've got all of our individual characters in. We've only got and that's wrong as well, but let's put that G in there just to correct that. And then let's say we've got all of them in up to Z. I'm going to save that, file, save. And then we need to generate our font from here. This is the kind of this is one of the final steps. So you just go file, and then you go to generate fonts, click on that button there, and then we're going to tell the computer where we're going to save our fonts. Okay, we're going to save the font, make sure it's a true type font, and we're going to call it Typography 2, and I'm going to save it in this Font Forge folder. Okay, and I'm going to click generate. I'm going to click yes, and I'm going to click generate because I don't know what any of the rest means, and it seemed to work last time. So it should have generated our font now. So we close these down. There we are there, Typography 2. So this Typography 1 is somewhere. There's Typography 1. This is Typography 2. I'm going to just put a 1 on the end of that, so you know that was the one that was the uppercase. This is Typography 2 with some of the lowercase. So if I right click on that now, oh, one thing I need to show you actually before I install that, I'll need to save another copy of that. One thing that I need to show you, actually I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna continue installing this. There's an error that's gonna happen, and I'm gonna just show you this error. So we've got Typography 1 already installed, which is this here, the uppercase fonts, and then Typography 2 is the one with the lowercase, some of the lowercase fonts that we've put in, or letters, sorry, letters. So if we click on that, right click on it, click install. Typography already exists. Do you want to replace it? Okay, we're going to click yes. It's talking about Typography here, not Typography 2. Okay, but let's just go with that for now. Okay, and we'll click yes, we want to replace it. Now hopefully I'll save this document. I'm going to close it. Just going to call this Typography test. Close it down. Open up my notepad again. WordPad, it's called. And then hopefully our new font should have installed. Okay, so I'm going to go A, uppercase A, lowercase a, space, uppercase B, lowercase b, C, uppercase C, lowercase c, D, uppercase D, lowercase d. And I think we got up to H, but I'm not going to do them all. At the minute, these fonts, this font that we're using is Calibri, okay? But if we go down to our Typography font here, there we go, it's all installed. Happy days. So pretty happy with that. There's our lowercase a, there's our lowercase b, c and d. And can you see what I was talking about those baselines, how the baselines are not kind of matching the baselines of the uppercase at the minute? And that's one of the reasons that those guidelines are in place, or the graphic artists use them, is so that text and big bodies of text make sense together, and they line up, and it's easy to read text. At the minute they're not quite lining up, but that might be the look that you're going for, and that's not to say that it's wrong. It's just a consideration. Okay. So there we go. We've got our A, B, C, D. We've got E and lowercase e. We've got our uppercase F and lowercase f. We've got our G, and I think that's it. We've got a H. Oh, there, we don't have a lowercase h. So we'd need to go through the entire process to get H to Z installed. And you'd need to go into your Font Forge and keep on going through the rest of those. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you, and I was halfway through it, changing my plan, was when I generated my font. When I installed the font. So we go back to the Typography. If you notice there, it says Typography 2, but when I ask to the computer install it, it says Typography font is already installed. It doesn't refer to it as Typography 2, it just refers to it as Typography. Okay, I'm not going to replace it, and I'm going to stop what I was doing there. I want to take you somewhere on here, and I'm new to this program as well, guys. I've never ever claimed to be a type designer, but just showing you the process here. If you go to, I think it's Elements, and if you go to Font Info, this is quite important to organizing your fonts. Now, the font name that it was referring to when I tried to install my font here, just as another example, Typography font is already installed. This is the font name it's referring to in Font Forge. It's referring to the font name here, not the font name of the file that you use to amend your font and your family of fonts. It's different. It's the output font that you use to install into your computer. Okay, So what you do is just name it whatever name you want it to be. Okay, so that's the font name. The family name might be Type Happy. Name for humans, I'm just going to leave it as Type Happy, but just so we know that the font name is there. So you could have 3 or 4 different variations of this font within that one family. Okay, and that's why we need to be careful with our font name. So I've changed that to 2. I'm going to click OK. So if I go and export that now, or generate that font, and I'm going to put that in the in here. Cancel this for 1 minute. I'm going to change this to test with a capital in all in uppercase and click OK. Just OK. Shouldn't have any spaces. There we go. If I export that now, so I'm going to export this now. Fonts there. It's going to export it as Type Happy Test. I make sure that's true type, which it is. Click generate. Click generate. If we go back to our folder, there's the test one. Okay. If I right click on that and install, let's have a look. What have I done here? Thought I was being clever, and I wasn't. The family name needs to be test as well, I think. This is all experimenting now because I've never done this before. Generate fonts again, call that test, generate, replace, generate. We go back to our folder again. Let's just have a quick look. Type Happy, there's our test that was just created. If I right click on that, install, fingers crossed, no. Okay, let's go back. The only other thing that we need to change in that font info is name for humans. Okay, so I'm going to give that the name test as well. I'm hoping that is the file name that it needs to be. Okay, place, generate, and if not, I don't know. So generated that new font. We've got the one that we done last week, this new one with the some of the lowercase, and this is a test. I'm just testing to make sure the name is correct, and that works. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure how we organize our different families. However, that'll be something for another day. But what you need to do, guys, is if you're creating a different version of your font for now, you need to do is make sure that the name for humans is changed. Okay, if you keep that name as the same name and then you go and do some amendments, let's say you want to go and say, oh, I'm not happy with that G, so I'm gonna do a different version of this font. I like the way it is at the minute. It's all great, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do type sad, and I'm going to have sad faces. If you don't change the name for humans name of the font, it'll override the font that is installed in your computer. Okay, so if you want both fonts or different fonts of the same style or whatever installed in your computer, you need to make sure that you go to element, font information, and change the name for humans. That's what you need to do. Right, so if you go back to our WordPad, this is just where we're testing it. If I click on this now, I should have Type Happy Test, and there's a test there, and it's exactly the same as the other one, but there's the two different versions there. Okay, and there's a test. So there we have it. Okay, what I'm going to do at the end of the session is I'm going to finish off the rest of this, the placement of an assignment of each of these letters that we've drew. I'm going to finish those off in Font Forge. I'm going to export them as the final Type Happy font, and then I'll have that in that folder that is in our session folder. I'm going to in here, and I'll put it in there. Type Happy. I'll replace that one with the most up-to-date one. You can download that and play around with it. Okay, you can start typing documents and stuff like that with it. Okay, and then maybe type a paragraph out and just see how it looks, because at the end of the day, you'll not be able to see how that font looks until you start playing around with it, putting it into tables, putting it into big chunks of text to see if it's easy to read what that text is, and so on and so forth. Okay, but that's what we're going to end up. That's what we're going to look at. That's what I will do towards the end of this, at the end of the session. Then you can download all the different files for this session. Rightio then. So let's say we've created our font. We've put that in. All right, it's all well and good. All right, that's brilliant. But what are we going to do with this font? Okay, why do we download these different types of fonts from the internet? Why do we create our own? And the answer, there's a number of different answers really. It's to make our artwork, to make our designs stand out, or to create a different kind of feel. If you look at the Hermes 1943, looks like a really cool old kind of typewriter kind of font. And then if you go to medieval, for example, you've got like an old newspaper type font. So let's say you were a set designer for a new film, and you were tasked with doing the artwork for the front cover of a newspaper. You might want to create the font for that, or you might want to download the font for that, and this creates a completely different look to the likes of, say, this, for example, where you might be a set designer again, and you might be doing a keypad into a bank. Okay, it might be a futuristic bank, or might be a futuristic kind of office block, where you need to type in your key information to get in, and there you go. The font's completely different. Equally, different types of graphics, different types of posters will require different looks depending on what your audience what the audience is that you're trying to attract to your artwork. Okay, so that's why we want to create it, and we need to really apply this. It's not good just having these fonts sitting on our computers. We need to apply them to different scenarios. So I've got a little task for you over for next week, and that task is to play around with the existing fonts on your computer, not the ones that we've just made, just the existing fonts on your computer. I've got this little paragraph that was in my head earlier this afternoon. So just a little song, Don't Worry, Be Happy, okay? And this is some of the lyrics from that song. And at the minute, in this document, it's all in Arial. Arial is the font, okay? Or the type. And then the size of that, of the words are all, I'll put them at 10. Okay, so they're all at 10 at the minute. What I want you to do for, if you wanted to play around and get creative, is play around with your already installed fonts on your computer, and try and make this bland document look quite interesting. Now let's have a look at some examples of typography before we wrap up towards the wrap up for today's session. So let's have a look at great examples. Great example of typography. So there we go, melt like an ice cream. There's cool little, see how that font has been adapted to the artwork there. Can't see what that image is. See how this font has been applied to the background of that text. The text has been overlaid onto the background there. Level up life. Okay, so it's like a gaming application. So they've used like this pixelated text there. Say hello. And let's see if there's any other examples that I can use to show you. You make me smile. You see how they use a different, this is obviously really, it's a custom font, and they've used different sizes there, different colors to make things stand out, and they've put it on a lovely landscape there. Dream, I can't really read what that says. Dream Team, that says there. Then that says something type, I think. Yep, type. Cataclysmic type. Now I'm not asking you to do is do graphic work with it, but what I'm asking you to do, let's see if we can find some examples. You can use that as inspiration, but let's have a look at examples of standard fonts creatively. Best simple graphic design. I'm just trying to show you something that's in my head that I think will help with this activity. So maybe something a little bit like this, without the box. You could put a box in there if you want, but really I don't want you to put any elements there. All I want you to do is really look at the text itself. And play around with the text size, the different types of font. So I can't find an example to show you, so I'm going to do it myself. Okay. So what I'm kind of getting at is I want to keep it very simple, and I don't want you to really use graphics. I just want you to concentrate on changing the text and changing the text style. So let's say we put the don't on a separate word. Or let's not do that. Let's say put that on a separate line, and I'm going to put that, I didn't want to use don't because don't's a negative word, so let's use be happy because that's a more of a positive word. Put that as a in big letters there, and let's say this here, let's say we'll centralize that instead. maybe sing. Might want sing as a big letter as well, because it's a nice thing to do. So big sing. I'll put that on its own thing there. Note for what? Don't worry. And then be happy. And then I'm going to leave it there, okay? And then I want you to try and change the font as well. See what fonts you've got installed in your computer. So be happy. I'm thinking of a nice kind of happy font that might looks happy to me. So a font that looks happy to me that I've got installed on my computer looks, I'm gonna say, is something like that one maybe. No, it's too sharp, but maybe that one. And just have a play around and see what you can do with your font. See what you can do with that simple text. Add some graphics if you want, but don't get hung up on that too much. Just play around with the different styles of text and the different fonts that can create different that can convey different meanings. Okay, so don't might be like it's like an instruction, isn't it? So if we can find maybe a bold text for that, don't worry, be happy. You know, and have a play around with that. So I'm gonna undo all that there, put it back to where it was. That file's available for you to download and have a play. It's done in Google Documents. You can use it, download your version by going to File, download as a .docx file, or download it as an open document format. Open it in one of your word processing programs that you might have installed on your computer and just have a play, or download it and then open it in OpenOffice, upload it, and open it in Google Docs, upload it again. So that's a cool little activity just for you to get to kind of make associations now with the fonts and the different styles of fonts and what they might kind of say to you. Okay, and then send them in to me. You've got my email address. The email address is at the top of this presentation here. Just go out here, go all the way to the top. My email address is there. Whack an email to me with your examples, and I'll show them not on the next two sessions, because they're going to be pre-recorded, guys, but on the session on the 30th, I'll show those examples there, and we'll have a little look at see what you've been playing on with. Okay, so let's have a little summary before we kind of wrap up for today's session, shall we? Covered quite a lot, and there is a lot to take in, but I just want to try and show you how we can kind of how simple it is really to bring in your own handwritten fonts into the computer. Okay, now the alternative to bringing it into the computer is to write all those different elements out, cut them out, like you saw in that video when they were explaining the history of typography. Cut them out, and then you can create your own you can own card versions of them. You could cut them out and make stamps and what have you. But the benefit of bringing it into the computer is once you've done a little bit of work to it, it's sitting there and you can create your own digital artwork, and that's what we want to try and do. So what have we done? We've looked at the different words associated with typography. We know now that glyphs is just a posh word for symbols, and what I am referring to, typeface, type, and font is just that kind of the letters that are part of that family of text. We had a really cool video explaining the history of typography, and that was within 5 minutes. That was really good. So if you're really interested in any of that, I urge you to kind of research some of those fonts, some of those historic fonts that he was talking about. And then in that link as well, it'll suggest some other cool historical or cool videos that'll talk you through the history of typography as well. That's what we've looked at, applying some of the basic, I don't like to call them rules, but I don't want to confuse rules with guidelines, but the basic kind of ideas behind how the letters sit, and we looked at guidelines today. So the guidelines help the text kind of flow when you're putting the different fonts together, and when you're putting your different letters together. If you've got set guidelines, it helps the text, helps you read lengths and paragraphs and passages of text easier if they sit on different guidelines. Okay, but if you're creating a bit of artwork that is, say, that doesn't need to, you don't need to read big bodies of text. You don't want the text to flow. Then that's when you can start breaking those rules slightly and having your text sit in different positions on those in that area and those areas of your guidelines. So we looked at the different guidelines, and that's them there. And this presentation will be made available for you on our YouTube description. These are the step-by-step processes that we did. So we've drew our hand-drawn fonts. We've brought them into our computer. We've traced them. We've brought them into our Font Forge package, which is this one here. And then we exported them as a file and installed the fonts onto our computer, and there they are there, and we got up the H. So what I'll do after today's session is I'll continue from H to Z, so you've got a full set of uppercase and lowercase characters to play with as well. Okay, and what else did we do quickly? And that was about it. And there's a really cool tool there, guys, to play around with as well, which is that Bezier game. If you're struggling with that Bezier tool, it does take a while to get used to. The pen tool in Illustrator, and I think it's called the Bezier tool actually in Inkscape. If you're struggling with how to use this, this game is pretty good, especially if you've got 5 minutes and you want to figure out how to how it works. I mean, as you can see, I'm not very good at it either, but it's good to have a play around with and see, and understand how that tool works. So that's a good little link there in that presentation. And that's about it for today's session, guys. We've done quite a bit. We've covered a lot of ground. We've got our font up to about 80% complete, and I'll finish that off for you by the end of the day, and I'll put that available for you to download. What we're going to look at next week, really, which is going to be the pre-recorded. We're going to look at so we've covered guidelines today. So I'll take that out and I'll put that in there. Serif and sans serif fonts, he did cover that in that video, and I'll just go now that it's here. It's very easy to explain if you don't already know what it is. Your serif font is your old style fonts with the feet and like kind of caps at the top and the bottom. See there and there. That's a serif font. Okay, and then these are the fonts without those kind of fancy little feet. Okay, and sans means without. So that's the difference between the two main types of fonts there. Next week we'll have a look at some more of the anatomy of the letters. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the anatomy. I'm going to look at some of the anatomy that forms the letter, some of the things that you might come across a lot of the time. See, I talked about this already, the tail. There you go, there's a serif there. shoulder is often referred, well, it's often referred in typography as the kind of the top bit of the like the curve there. Terminals, the end points, obviously, ear. So these are some of the things. So we'll look at that in a bit more detail in the next session there. And then we'll look at applying another set of rules or ideas that the pros concentrate on when they design their fonts, and we'll apply that to our Type Happy font to try and tweak that slightly, okay, to see where we are with that, and see if we see that gradually morph and change and become more and more professional as the sessions go on. Okay, but that's us for today, guys. We've covered a lot of ground. My voice is getting a bit sore because I've been talking too much, but that's us. Okay, we've got some really cool, interesting links at the bottom of this presentation that would be good for you to have a look through if you're interested. But that's us. Have a nice weekend. Any suggestions, any feedback, please send it through our surveys, and our surveys can be accessed from the presentation there, or on our YouTube description. There's a link there, so if you just fill the feedback in, that'd be much appreciated. Okay, but until next week, we'll see you then, and I'll see you live again on the 30th. All right, thanks very much, guys. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you in a few weeks' time. Okay, take care.